What is up, y'all? It's your boy Jones, and welcome to season 2, episode 2 of the Jones and Podcast. I'm your host, Jones, and y'all know what we came to do. We Jonesing for everything, but today we are specifically Jonesing for fantasy sports advice, and there's no better guy to do it. There's no better guy to go talk to than my guy, Tipp Major, aka Straight Tripping. Straight Tipping, sorry. What's going on, my boy?
Yeah, I'm tripping too. I'm tripping into, yeah.
What's going on, my guy? Welcome to the show.
Joe's, it's good to see you, bro, man. We've talked quite a few times, and now I get to actually see you, talk to you live.
Right.
It's cool, man. I'm excited, bro. Appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for joining, man. This is something that I wanted to do for a while. There's a lot of guys I want to get on there, but for those that don't know, me and Tip, we know each other from X, formerly known as Twitter, and we got a community over there, just building great content and just having fun over there. So Tip was one of those guys that we just connected because his energy, his advice is very, very good. So I suggest everybody that's listening, watching this episode to pay attention. But Tip, let the people know where they can find you first before we get into what you got going on.
Yeah, 100%, man. So I have a X account or Twitter, whatever you want to call it. It's at Straight Tippin, and that's STR, the number 8, and then Tippin, TIPPING. It's in the comment section. You can check it out there. Also on Instagram, same name, Straight Tippin. And then on Facebook, it's Tipp Major. My first name and last name, it's TIPPMAJOR. So you can check me out on those platforms right now.
That's what's up, definitely. And like you said, it's in the comments. So if you didn't get that, go check in the comments. It'll be there. And again, we'll repeat it at the end of the show so you guys can get that. But so, Ted, tell me, because I these are personal questions that I got for you. How did you? Because everybody knows the fantasy sports world is a fast growing place. Everybody wants to get into it. The kids are getting into it now. Adults are into it. Our age people, like everybody is involved in fantasy sports. What made you get into fantasy sports? But not only just fantasy sports, playing it, you got into like studying it and really breaking it down. And that is something very interesting. So how did you get into that?
Yeah, so it started in 2005 for me. I would always hear people. I was always into football. I like playing football. I like watching football. Obviously all the sports. But I was hanging out with some friends, and they were talking trash to each other about Ben Roethlisberger not scoring him enough points and this and that. And yeah, I started in 2005. I know. Don't let these gray hairs fool you. Now, look, I'm not a young buck anymore. I'm 41 years old. So. But yeah, man, I got into it, 2005. I drafted like every Cincinnati Bengal that you could draft that year because I didn't know what I was doing. I think I had Carson Palmer, I had Rudy Johnson, Chad Ochocinco, or Chad Johnson at that time, and TJ Houshmandzadeh. And my team sucked, bro. Like I was like, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, I'm gonna draft all these players, figure it out. But that second year 2, I said, you know what? I'm going to switch the game up. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to draft these running backs because back in 2005, unlike now, running backs were the premier. You're like, those were the guys, right. You have guys who touch the ball 20 times a game. And the receivers were starting to come into the fold, but it was a running backs game. So, but yeah, I just, I was really excited about it my second year, and year 2, I won. Off the strength of having Tom Brady, Marshawn Lynch. I had Frank Gore on that team. I had a really good team, but Tom Brady was the one that really did it because that was the year that he had the 50 touchdowns.
So yeah, that's a good year to have him.
Touchdowns, and I catapulted, man. And so then I was like, awesome. This is fun. I won in year 2, and at that time I was only in 1 league. So then I was like, okay, maybe I can handle 2 or 3 leagues. And, I did that. I met up with some other friends at work, and then I did that. What you got?
I got a question for you before you keep going. That year that you won the chip, did you know what you were doing at that time, or was it just like, you know what, I'm
It was a little
pulling
bit
this
of
out the
luck.
hat?
I'm not gonna
Okay.
sit here and tell you fantasy is it is strategy. You do have to have some sort of strategy,
Hmm.
to it. But then there's also a lot of luck on the side too.
Right.
Who would have
Right.
known that Tom Brady would have 50 touchdowns that year, right?
Exactly.
But you look at the team that he had. You looked at Randy Moss, Wes Welker, Dante Stallworth. Like, he had a really good team, and
Right.
so at that point, I was like, well, he's got Randy Moss, and me being a Raiders fan, I was not high on Randy Moss, so I didn't want any of Randy Moss, but I was like, Tom Brady's pretty good, I'll go with Tom Brady.
Right.
So I went with Tom Brady, and then that year, I made some really good moves during the waiver wire periods. I did a couple of trades, and because my first year I didn't do any trades, so that second year I did some trades, and they worked out for me. And again, that luck factor. So I
Right.
lucked out and got some really good players, key players on, and it just really catapulted from there, man. And the studying behind it, at that point, I still didn't really know what I was doing. I was still like, I get it, but I'm not like grasping the concept of it.
Right.
And but once you grasp the concept of it, once you do the studying and you look at the research, because there is research, there's trends that you got to look at too. Once you look
Yep.
at trends and you understand the trends, but the number one thing I started noticing years after was coaches. I look at how the coaches
Mm.
coach. For instance, if I was looking at maybe as Sean Payton, right? Back in those days, he run a good offense. So you would want maybe
Right.
a receiver, a
Hmm.
running back from that offense, or so forth. So I would look into the coaches and what the coaches were doing.
That's huge. I never thought of that actually. That's a really good thought process of not only just thinking about the player and that obviously you got to think about the player, but you got to think about the system the player is in. So, and how is that going to work out for them? So, obviously that, yeah, that's some good advice right there. So, when you what year do you say you started studying it?
Yeah, so it took maybe like 3 or 4 years, because by that
Okay.
time, 3 or 4 years, I had about 3 championships. But of course,
Wow.
over the course of like 4 or 5 different leagues that I was in, so I had about
Right.
3 championships. So then I was like, okay, you can make some serious money into this. And at
Hmm.
this point, DFS, daily fantasy wasn't really something big.
Right.
But I was like, I was still winning leagues. I was making some money. I was like, okay, cool. Now I can start studying this and trying to figure
Hmm.
out it's not just about the players, it's about their stats and
Right.
knowing their stats, knowing their trends and things like that. So that was when I started studying, about 3 4 years in.
Okay. So when you talk about the studying, how much studying do you got to put into it? Like, is it something you gotta? All right, no, I gotta really sit my ass down and
Oh yeah.
really focus in, or is it one of those? I just pick up a few things here and there, and then I'll be good.
I mean, don't go too crazy on it. You don't have, it's not like you're studying for a midterm or anything, but you do have to sit down and study. You have to look at, like I said, you got to look at the trends of those players. If it's a player moving to a different team, you look at that, and then you look at the coaches behind that. You say, okay, so this coach is now going to try to get this guy the ball this way, or
Right.
this coach is, he's not known to be, an offensive good-minded coach, so maybe he's not going to have that great of a year. But
Mm.
you got to look at situations like that. But you do have to put an amount of studying in there if you want to be successful, because the studying comes in the draft period, the draft time. Because
Right.
I know a lot of people who just go in there, just wing it, just say, hell, I'm gonna
Yep.
draft who I want to draft, or I'm gonna let whoever falls to me falls to me. I always go in with the strategy. Now I know, just like Mike Tyson said, everybody goes in there with a strategy until you get punched in
To
the
your
mouth. So
point.
I know that something's gonna happen to where my strategy is gonna get screwed up, right?
Right.
So
100%.
you gotta always have a plan B, plan C, and hell, even sometimes a plan D in
Mm.
there. So I always have a backup plan. So like for instance, this year I would try something different with the zero RB strategy. I always was big on the running backs, but as I said
Right.
earlier, the running backs position since last year there was only three. Now you got to understand this: in 2005 there was 18 running backs that ran the ball or touched the ball 20 plus times. Last year there was three.
Mm.
So now okay, running backs they're valuable. You need them, but the wide receivers are now becoming more valuable because there was
Yes.
about 10 wide receivers who outscored some of these running backs on a per game basis. And you can get guys like, and I was like looking at it like, okay, if I go ahead and get myself one of these, premier wide receivers or three premier wide receivers, who are some running backs I can look at? Well, you want running backs who are going to touch the ball, who are going to catch the
Yeah.
ball a lot. So that's something that I was looking into as well.
I like that. And before we go on, I want to shout out to those that are in the live, that are in the comments. Appreciate you guys. Deshaun Kington, appreciate you. I don't know what the next person's thing is. It looks like a bunch of letters, but appreciate you being there. And he also has a question. Hey guys, can I ask which team is better for a full PPR redraft league? Can you see the comments that he has there?
Yeah, I see it. So it says, can I ask a question? Yeah, which team is better for a full PPR? So like you're going to look at a team that's going to throw the ball a lot, right? So, for instance, like those high-powered offense, like a Chargers, they're going to throw the ball a lot, so they're going to have a lot of
100%.
opportunities for their pass catchers, even their running back once he comes back, Austin Eckler, to catch the ball. So you want somebody who has a high-powered offense. Philadelphia Eagles, another high-powered offense. Another team to look at would be the Miami Dolphins. I mean,
Dolphins,
they throw the ball
100%.
around the field, right? So you saw what they've done against Denver. I know last week that was bad, man. But we saw.
Yeah,
But I think it was.
Buffalo's for real though.
I think that's more of a team, in the Bills that just
Right.
ready to play.
Yep.
But you want to look at those high-powered offense when you're looking at PPR, and that's another thing. You don't want a team, or you don't want a player necessarily. You're gonna get a player from a team that's maybe not doing as well. I think I got like DJ Moore, for instance, with the Chicago Bears in one of my teams. But it's like, yeah, he's the number one. So he's going to get some passes thrown to him when that offense starts to click. So, but to answer that question, you want to get teams on high-powered offense when you're looking at a full point PPR, or teams where they throw the ball quite a bit.
Right. Yeah. No, that makes 100%. And I guess he has two teams there. I guess we can check that out. But yeah, let me get into the next question. How do you become successful? Like you gave us a lot of points right there while you were talking, but how do you how do you strategize? That's my question. How do you strategize to going into a draft saying, all right, this is what I need to do going into this draft to be successful?
Yeah. So first of all, you got to do your research, right? You don't want to go out there and not do any research. So you got to know during preseason training camp who's banged up, who's injured, who's not injured, who's coming off of a big injury last year, or
Yep.
who may have gotten hurt, in off season, things like that. So, like for instance, for me, I knew I didn't want to really go after a guy like Saquon Barkley, because
Right.
last year he had a good year. But what I'm getting at is you go after somebody who's injury prone or who may have had an injury during the preseason, you're not going to want to draft that person. So let's say, for instance, another guy I really wasn't high on was Derrick Henry this year. Now I know he had a really good week last week, but
Yep.
I was looking at the year he had before, where he had over 300 and he had like 400 carries. He was averaging 23 touches per game. So that's really high on him. And he's 29 years old. They've got Tajay Spears in the mix. That's not somebody I really want to draft heavily in, because you're going to have to pay a high capital to get him.
Right.
And is he going to return on that? Well, last week he did. But if you look at the week before that, he did not. So you got to look at people that, I like to draft players that I know are healthy, first of all, that I know that are up and coming. Like, for instance, I was drafting a lot of Rashad White this year. I was drafting a lot of James Cook this year, because James Cook, Rashad White, those guys were on the up and up.
Yep.
And, they were younger guys. They haven't had a lot of tread on those tires. So those are people that I was looking at too.
That's huge. And that's great advice too, because like you said, you can't. I mean, and I was one of them. I was one of those guys that would just go into a draft like, hey, I'm just gonna go get the guys that I know are good, and I'll be fine. That's how it should work, right? No, I've
No, because
won one league in my
in
whole life.
contrary to that, real quick, in contrary to that, I thought it was going to be a big Darren Waller season because Daniel Jones, he comes over here to the
Yep.
Giants, and he did really well with the Raiders. So I was really high on Darren Waller at the beginning of the season.
I
But
was too.
man, it's just not coming into the mix. And I knew that they were going to have some offensive line issues, but I really wasn't worried about that because Daniel Jones, what is he known for? What are his strengths? Throwing short passes, intermediate
Right.
passes, and accurate. But
Hmm.
man, when the offensive line is this bad, I mean, it's just one of those scenarios that you just
That
have to
makes
live
it tough.
with. And now you got to deal with Darren Waller not doing shit because he ain't.
Yeah, that's true. That's real tough, and you got to account for that sometimes. You got to really think about it sometimes. But like you said, when you got when they're being put in a position where even though they got a bad offensive line, they should still have some success.
Yeah.
It happens. But that leads me to my next question before I go into the next question. Um, what when is a good time to say, you know what, this ain't working out. Let me go move this guy, either trade or with the waiver wire.
Yeah, for sure. You don't ever want to panic too much, right? Especially week 1. Week 2, you don't
Right.
want to panic. But like right around now, week 4, I mean, we've had 4 weeks now, and a lot of times, a lot of things that we talk about or we don't talk about enough is that these players are not playing in the preseason nowadays. And that's
Right.
why we get a lot of these banged up guys, nagging injuries, ankle
Hmm.
sprains, hamstring injuries, because you imagine a player 200 pounds not really playing, in practice, they play hard. They're
Right.
practicing hard. But then when you get to a game, it's different. So when you get to these guys, that's why you get a lot of these nagging injuries, these lingering
100%.
injuries. So, like I said, right around week 3, week 4, you have seen that, okay, they're either trending upward or they're trending downward. Like for
Right.
one guy who's trending up for me was Lamar Jackson. And I called it last
Hmm.
week. I was like, we are going to start to see Lamar Jackson heat up. Look at his weeks. Besides week 1, every other week he's gone up in
Yep.
his point total. And last week was one of those weeks where I was like, okay, now look, they're not playing Deshaun Watson. This is going to be a week
Right.
Lamar Jackson is going to really do well. He did great. And so that's something you want to pay attention to as well, is again, those trends. But whenever you want to get somebody off of your team or you're done with a player, you want to do it before he has that just total letdown game.
Yeah.
Versus Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley right now, that week 1, he killed it. And ever
Right.
since then, he's been very up and down. I know on week 3 when he played against the Texans, he didn't do anything. Last week he had a touchdown, and maybe and then like I want to say like 38 yards. So it's like, do I get rid of Calvin Ridley? Does he still have some value? Yes. So now I'm sending out trade offers to get somebody for Calvin Ridley. So that's when you want to get. So right around week 3, week 4 is when we start to see, okay, this is how this offense is going to work. This is how they're going to implement things. So that's when you need to start figuring out where you're going to trade or trade away or trade for players.
That means I'm doing the right thing because that's what I was thinking. I'm like, you know what? I'm not. Some guys haven't been playing well, but I'm gonna wait till like week 4
Yeah.
because we need a sample size of this. We can't just go off of one game. Some people do that. Oh, he had a horrible game. I'm getting rid of him, and then he ends up turning up. So that's the other thing. It's one
I
of
don't know
those
how you
fishy
feel.
things.
I don't know how you feel about Kyle Pitts. Like, yo, I was telling
Ding,
people,
ding, ding. Because
I was
that's literally who I'm talking
get
about.
rid of, like, why did you even draft him? Because we've seen this year over year from him. When he's not, when beside that 1 year when he was banged up, his rookie year he had 1,000 yards, right? But I think he had 1 touchdown, 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's like, it's almost like, what are they doing with this talented player that they have, right? And now you're in a scenario where I've gotten people say, do I drop Kyle Pitts? And I'm like, no, you can't drop a player like that, because
Right.
the next week you drop him, he's going to go off, and now you can't get him off the waiver wire. You don't have
Right.
priority. So,
Right.
you with a guy like Kyle Pitts, if I could just say right now, you trade him away. He's a
Yes.
tight end. trade Kyle Pitts away. Try to, and you're not going to get a lot for him. You got to understand that if you are not getting, if you drafted somebody at their value and they're not doing well, you're not going to get that same draft value for that person. So if you're okay with getting a wide receiver 3 or a running back 3 flex guy for him, then do it, man. You got to do it because Kyle Pitts right now is just not. They don't utilize him at all.
That was one of my biggest mistakes, and it was one of my like, do I need to do this? Should I? Or, I was so stuck, but I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna give him a second chance. Last year I had him, I took him, didn't do his thing. I said, you know what? This year Atlanta's they're gonna make it. They're gonna turn around this year, and he's gonna be one of the primary guys, especially with Bijan being there. That team is gonna do something with them. I was wrong, so. Right after we're done here, I am definitely going to start making some moves to get Pitts out of there. So thank you, Tip, on that. We're going to get to your question, Hop, at the end. We want to get through this real quick first. What are your thoughts on fantasy football in general this season based off of injuries, performances, bad performances? What is your overall thoughts right now? Like, what kind of year is it?
I mean, it's fun. Again, it's one of those situations where did we see all these injuries coming this early in the season? No, but again, a lot of these players aren't playing in the preseason, so a lot of these players that aren't playing in the preseason are the ones that are getting banged up. So I'll tell you, I was high on coming into the season. I was high on Aaron Rodgers. I thought he was going to do really well. And then I started seeing issues with the offensive line in the training camp. And I was like, oh, that might be a concern. I was high on Breece Hall. I was high on a lot of the Jets this year. And I even wrote a couple articles on Breece Hall and on Aaron Rodgers. But so it's like one of those situations where you're like, okay, you got to look at the trends at the beginning of this, or excuse me, in preseason or training camp too. So I was looking at a lot of reports on those. So my thoughts for fantasy this year is that it's still very early. Miami Dolphins, though, if you can get your hand on any Miami Dolphin, I know they had a bad week last week, but that's a one-off.
That's 1 week,
They were playing against a motivated Buffalo team.
Yeah.
So I'm telling you right now, if you can get your hands on any one of these guys, Devon Achane, Mostert, hell, Jeff Wilson, if he's out there on waivers, I would pick him up because if one of these guys goes down, then you got another bona fide, at least a goal line guy. And then obviously the receivers, hell, I would even go out there and pick up Cozen Anderson, bro. Like it's one of those situations where they like to utilize their speed. So go after that. So I'm right now, I really like any of the Miami Dolphins out there. Another thing I was looking at for fantasy is the running back situation. We got to understand the fact that running back is not it's not what it used to be. So the RB positions it's not dead just yet, but you can get some of these guys off the waiver wire. Like I drafted Devon Achane, but there was other leagues where I didn't, and I picked him up off the waiver wire, and I was like, I'm gonna roll with this guy if he does well. And that week that he blew up, I was like, yo, all right, I'll play him again the next week. So you just got to understand those trends. I know I'm hyping up the Miami Dolphins big time right now, but you want to score.
They deserve it. Football. Yeah, exactly.
And that's what it's all about.
100%. Wins or loss, it doesn't matter when it comes to fantasy football. It's about them points, baby. It's about them points. And man, I was so sick that I couldn't get how do you pronounce his name?
Achane. I don't know. It's so many different ways they say his name now.
One of my boys got him right after that game, and I was just sick that he was even on the waiver wire. Like, how did he get there? Oh man, like I was so sick. But luckily, I do have one Miami Dolphin, and he is the most dangerous of them all, Tyreek Hill. So I'm just fine in that area. But thank you for answering those questions. Before we go on and talk about your lovely Las Vegas Raiders.
Be nice now, man. That'll be nice. Don't make me talk about the Falcons in Arizona. What happened over there? Like
we definitely gonna get into it, but I definitely want to answer a few questions from these guys. So can you see the question that my guy Hop, I'm calling him for now because I can't pronounce
Oh,
everything else. He after the PPR league
yeah, he's
question.
got Danny Crimes. That's funny. I like that. Danny
Yeah.
Crimes, Bijan Robinson, Josh Jacobs, Eckler, Zach Moss. So what? So this is all his team. Is he? What is he doing? Is he bragging?
Right. That's a. Let me see. Hey. Oh, I guess he's asking which team is better because he has two teams there.
Oh, he's got two teams up here. Okay.
Yep.
Uh, let's
Yeah.
see. I'm looking at it right now. He's got Michael Thomas. He's got Jaden Reed. He's got Waller. So this is on the blue team, and then I see he's got a gray team on here too.
Yep.
First of all, I like his running backs. His running back situation is on. We're looking at the first team. His running back situation is really nice, and he's got some really good dog. He got some dogs on the receiver end too. So I would say he's got a pretty solid team. Definitely an issue with Danny Crimes, Danny Dimes, Danny Dollars, whatever you want to call
Danny
him.
Crimes.
I feel like they will turn it around, but is it going to be too late, for your
Right.
fantasy team? Because right now, if he's rolling out there just with Danny Dimes, that's a problem. So what I would do is I would take somebody like maybe that Zach Moss because Jonathan Taylor's coming back this week, and I would try to get a quarterback for him. Maybe look at a guy who has a quarterback on his bench. Maybe go out there and waivers, look at for a quarterback as well. I don't know what your waiver wires look like, but there's guys like C.J. Stroud, Sam Howell. You want to look at some of those guys because Danny Dimes right now, I'm not telling you to drop him, but I will tell you that he's just not doing it right now. That whole offense is shambles
Yes.
due to that bad offensive line, and they're just not clicking. And then Saquon too not being there too, that does not help. But all in all, solid team. But like I said, I like Zach Moss. We don't know when Jonathan Taylor is going to come back. I know he's slated for that practice window as of yesterday, but they're still going to work him into the mix. And remember, Jonathan Taylor doesn't want to be there. He does not want to play. So you need to go to whoever has another quarterback and say, look, man, I got Zach Moss here. He is the clear, legit number one. Should Jonathan Taylor either get traded or doesn't really come back and play. So that's somebody I would look at too. Team 2, he's got Brees Hall. It looks like JT. See, we just talked about JT. He's got really good receivers. I mean, running backs. I like Saquon, Kamara. Kamara, I love it, especially in a PPR. We saw what Kamara did last week, man. He came back and absolutely destroyed it in PPR, and that's what Kamara's going to do. He's got T-Law. I'm really good with T-Law. I know he's had a couple of down weeks, but I think he'll be fine. His receivers, though, on this end, Devontae Adams. He's got the same guys from the same team, Devontae and Jacoby. Now, that could work if it's a very high-powered offense. But in this case, it's the Raiders, my guys, but it's not a very high-powered offense. So I'm getting rid of one of those guys. I tend to say, obviously, you don't. If you get rid of Devontae Adams, you got to get something big in return. He had a scare last week with his shoulder injury, but he came back and balled out. Kelsey's good. Even though Kelsey, though, you know what? No, Kelsey has been a little down
Yes.
this year. I'm not even into his personal stuff. Screw all that. This is football.
Right.
We want to talk about that. But I know he's been a little down this year. Remember, he had that knee injury, and that's another thing too. These guys pick up these injuries during the offseason or in training camp. Maybe you should have not drafted him, or it was like you had to have drafted Kelsey high. I don't think he would have fallen to you in the second, third round. Or maybe he did, but you got to also understand those things. So these two teams, or this second team, is a good team. The only hole I see is the Devontae Adams and Jacoby Myers. You got to get one of those guys off your team. Maybe package them, or maybe get one of those guys off your team. Add another wide receiver in the mix. But his receivers are nice too with McLaurin and Godwin. He's got Dallas's defense. I know it's your voice, so Dallas is good. But he's asking down here. He's saying which team is better. I'm gonna go with the second team with Ty Law because he's got a solidified quarterback as opposed to Danny Crimes over there on the first team. So he solidified himself with a quarterback. So yeah, those are his questions. So which team was better?
Awesome. Appreciate you answering that.
Yeah.
Hey, you better listen to this man. You better listen to this man. He know what he's talking about. I'm trying to tell you right now. All right. So now let's get into your Oakland Raiders. Oh, sorry, I said Oakland.
Oh,
Las Vegas Raiders. Close enough. Um, what are your thoughts on your team right now? How are you feeling?
man, it's not pretty right now, man. I was nervous about the Jimmy G situation. I was at first I was like, oh, it could work, with Josh McDaniels. They got a history together, but then again, it's the Raiders, right? I mean, this has been one of the laughing stocks besides Detroit Lions. Shout out to Detroit Lions, man. Like those dudes look like they are just this could be the year that they make that big leap.
Yep.
What they did to Green Bay last week was crazy. But we talk about the Raiders. So, we got the whole Chandler Jones situation. That's really bizarre.
Yeah.
Their offensive line has not been as good as it was in the past. That was one of their strengths. We knew their defense was going to be, suspect. Um, can they turn it around? Not in that division, man. The Chargers, although they haven't looked great, they're still, the Chargers are going to be really good in that division. The Chiefs are the Chiefs. The Chiefs defense, man, has been lights out. I really like their defense a lot, but
unbelievable.
I think my Raiders will probably get 6-7 wins this year.
Okay.
And then that's pretty much it, man. And it will, I do like Aiden O'Connell though. I will tell you, man.
Okay.
Preseason, this kid was slinging the ball all across the field. Really good, accurate throws. Last week, but you got to also understand something too about preseason, because preseason can be tricky because you're looking at a lot of defenses that aren't going to show you a lot. They're not going to. Yes. They mask a lot of things that they do.
100%.
Because they're just out there trying to just get the guys reps, figure out who they're going to keep on their team. So that's another thing about preseason. I always like to talk about like the preseason, like maybe like the Victor Cruzes back in the preseason darlings or whatever. But you also got to understand we're looking at defenses that are not showing you everything. So that's something you got to look into as well. But again, my Raiders, it's gonna be some time, man. They got to sell the team. It's ownership. It's just not what it is. They got to get rid of McDaniels. He's not doing what he needs to do. It's not pretty right now.
Isn't that this is his second stint with the Raiders or no?
Josh McDaniels?
Yeah.
No, this is his first. So he was with
first one.
He was with Denver. So he was with New England, then went to Denver, then back to New England,
for sure.
then to the
okay.
So it was, it's and we saw what he did in Denver.
Yeah.
That was bad. So, but again, Tom Brady is what I think who got him that job. And a lot of people were speculating that Tom Brady was going to come out of retirement again, all this other stuff.
Go there. Yeah.
I did read some of those reports, and I was like, man, Tom Brady ain't coming back.
It's not going to happen.
Rodgers, but
yeah. Right. I don't think it'll happen, but he definitely was eyeing you guys for sure. And I know that had to like.
And Tom Brady, I think, is like an owner of the.
Yeah.
He does in the ownership group. I don't know.
Yeah.
So 100%. That was something too.
That's dope, and hopefully he can give those guys a couple tips here and there.
Right. And
turn that thing around.
The one thing I do want to say, I think Deshaun Kenton, he wrote about Joe Burrow, and I was really like heavy out Joe Burrow this year because of that calf injury, and a lot of people were like, "Yo, but that's Joe Burrow." Like Burke Myers.
Yeah.
From 50 show with Barry, and then so anyway, Burke was like, "Oh, Tip, you're wrong. You're wrong." How? And I was like, "Bro, these soft tissue injuries, guys,
that's serious.
Linger. These are situations that can linger through the whole season. And now, what are we looking at? Joe Burrow? They should have sat him down, just like Jamar Chase said. And I was so down on Joe Burrow. I think I had him ranked like number 8 or 9 on my preseason rankings. And a lot of people were like, "Why do you have him so low? Why, he's Joe Burrow." I'm like, "Nah, man, this calf injury is scary.
This is serious.
And so yeah, so
100%.
I see him talk about Joe Burrow and talk about Jamar Chase as well. So I just wanted to chime in on that.
But that's a perfect. I like that you chimed in on that because we got to think about that, guys. When we're doing our fantasy drafts and stuff, injuries that are going into the season matter because I've heard Shannon Sharp say this so many times. If you go into the season limping, you're gonna walk out that season limping. That's just how it is. It's football. It's a contact sport. So you're not just gonna get healthy by playing it.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably gonna get worse, or probably stay stable or something like that. But I agree 100% that uh, Burrow should have sat out these first few games, and they would have been okay, and he would have came back healthy and given them a really good shot to finish the season, like we've seen them do. We've
Right.
seen them do it before. So
I got a question for you. Whose fault do you think it is? Do you think it's the coaching, the upper management for not saying, "Hey, look, we're going to sit you down"? Because the players want to play. They
100%.
are not going to sit down, whether they got a big contract or not. They want to play. So who do you think's to blame on that?
So for me, the person that you got to put the blame on is the coach, Taylor. He's got to get this because, like you said, the players, their first, if you ask them, they're going to say they're playing. It doesn't matter how hurt they are. If the doctor clears them to play, they're going to say, I'm going to go out there and play. But the coach is supposed to be that guy that comes in and says, you know what? You're not, especially if you see it in practice. You see, all right, he's practicing. He's not looking like himself. Maybe we should give it a few weeks and save him from himself.
Right.
That's what a coach's job is to save the player from himself because the player is not going to think the right way. So he was supposed to say, hey, look, it's okay if we sit you down. If we take a few lumps in the season, that's okay. But you are our future. You are the future of the Cincinnati Bengals. If we lose, we don't win the Super Bowl this year, it's okay. Guess what? We didn't win last year or the year before. We'll be okay. We're still, it's not like we're out of it. It's
Right.
the window is still open, like he said, his whole career. He's got that whole window to win the Super Bowl. So I think it was the coach's job to go in there and say, let's get healthy. Get healthy. Let's not put him out on the field and risk further injury because you're not getting healthier playing on it. You're actually doing more damage to it by playing on it.
Yeah.
If you're hurt, sit out.
Yeah. Jamar Chase said it. He said at the beginning of the season, sit out, man. Like you don't need to go out there and prove nothing to nobody. Like
to nobody.
You are that dude. We need you for the rest of the season. And
yes,
yeah, for sure, man.
And I get it though. I 100% get where the coaches, the teammates, the players. I get it. They want to win. They've been waiting all off season for the beginning of this season to try to fight their way back into putting themselves into position to winning a Super Bowl. But at the end of the day, you can't win a Super Bowl if your best player is injured.
Right.
It's not going to happen. And you got a lot of deficiencies on your team, especially the O-line.
Right.
So you're going to put your guy out there, your number one guy out there behind a O-line was supposed to be fixed, but not completely fixed yet. That's a questionable call. And now you see what's happened. He's out there and he's not even really, like, it's clear that he's not playing his best football and he can't. It's not even that he doesn't want to. He is physically unable to do it. His calf is saying, I'm not going to allow you to do this because if you do, it's going to hurt.
Yeah. 100%.
So I think that they put themselves in a really tough position right now. I was looking at the schedule. Things could have there was some, especially coming up now. There's a soft part in their schedule where might be the time. Sit down, get healthy, and hopefully we get 2 wins out of that split, something like that, and then go for it. It's a hard climb to go, but it's better than losing him for the whole season or even longer.
Right.
Right. So yeah, you pretty much answered all my Raider questions that I had. You answered it all in one because you clearly don't want to talk about your
I don't.
Raiders.
Let's talk about that Arizona game against the Cowboys. Let's talk about that. Nah, just fucking with you. But yeah, I
I
don't.
love it.
Nah, I don't. Yeah, I don't really. You know what, man? I'll tell you this. I am a Raiders fan at heart. Before I played fantasy football, Raiders were my. That was who I, because of Bo Jackson. So then I started watching fantasy and started playing fantasy, and I was like, man, our Raiders aren't doing anything. They made it to the Super Bowl. They okay. But ever since I played fantasy, it's like they've been going downhill ever since. So it's kind of like fantasy and then the Raiders for me. So it's like I still tell people when they ask me, I say I'm a Raiders fan, but fantasy is what rules with me right now.
Yes, I 100% agree with that because I know I have plenty of friends that fall into that same area where it's like my team, especially if their team isn't playing well. When your team isn't playing well, of course, fantasy is gonna go exceed that. But when your team's playing well, and then fantasy, it's like, all right, they're leveled up.
100%.
But my last question for you is based on the whole season, right now through 4 weeks, going into five, who is the best in the AFC? Who is the best in the NFC?
So the NFC's it's easy right now. It's the 49ers. They look complete, like top to bottom, offense, defense. Christian McCaffrey is just killing it. What is he at now? 13 games in a row with a touchdown, bro. Like that.
Yeah.
Brock 30, like I mean, what 9-0 now? Like this team is running on all cylinders. You cannot like it's tough, too tough to stop. Now this week is going to be fun because we got your boys, those Cowboys against them, and they're playing in Santa Clara. So now I'll say some stats. Dak Prescott, I think he's played 2 games versus them, or in Santa Clara. He's actually had two pretty good games against them in Oakland. So now that when they played though, they were not this San Francisco 49ers team. So
right.
It'll be fun to watch. But so as far as the AFC,
it's a tough one in the AFC.
It is very tough. At the beginning of the year, I had the Chargers coming out of the AFC. But and I could stick with them. That offense is good, but they just lost Mike Williams. So I'm gonna say that what we saw last week from the Buffalo Bills. Now, here's the thing about the Buffalo Bills. They are a great regular season team. Their playoffs come in the fall. And you would think that it would be opposite for them, but they don't run the ball. So now we got to see how they do. Are they going to start to utilize the run? They got not only James Cook, but they've got Latavius Murray. They've got Damian Harris. So look out for those two guys. I mean, James Cook, but look out for those two guys at the end of the year once the weather starts to turn, up there in Western New York.
Oh, yeah.
Look out for those dudes to start running a little bit. Even McDermott said that they want to utilize or emphasize the run in the offseason a little bit more. So that's probably why they've got those 3, running backs there. So we might see a little change in that. But I don't know, man. This Miami Dolphins team is fun to watch, bro. It's something that I've never seen out of. I've been watching football since I was like 6, 5. I've never seen an offense like that, man. Like where you've got 4 players that are track stars, bro. Like that is. You even got Chosen Anderson who can run too. So we got 4 guys now. Will that equate in the later seasons? Maybe not, but then again, it's still they're still fast. So I think right now you got the 49ers versus the Miami Dolphins. I think that'll be fun to watch too because you got the old coach or the 2 coaches that that would be fun to watch. But so I'm gonna go with those 2 right now.
I love it. I definitely agree. As much as I hate to say it, I agree with your NFC pick, 49ers. They they're complete. That's the best way to describe it. They're complete in every aspect. Offense, defense, quarterback, running back, receiver, that scheme, their coaches. I mean, what bad can you say? Even their second year quarterback, who's played only 9 games, has played
That
flawless football.
and you know it's funny. Like Brock Purdy he's had some bad throws. He's been
Right.
inaccurate at times. But it's like they still make it work, man. And like you said, the scheme is crazy over there. But I will say this though, those Detroit Lions though, those Detroit Lions, watch out for them. I
Yes.
really like them a lot, man. I wrote an article on them in May about them winning that division. You know, hands down. Like I
Oh
didn't
yeah.
anybody
Yeah.
out there that could take them out. And so far, that's what we're seeing happen. So
100%.
those Detroit Lions, bro, they you know they are still on the up and up, but they are ascending very quickly, and I like them a lot.
100%.
But I don't think they could give the 49ers a little bit of run for their money, but you know, not. I think
Yeah,
you know,
not yet.
and I've been on spaces saying this. I think they could beat Philadelphia, the Eagles, especially the way the Eagles have been playing right now.
Yes.
Detroit
Yep.
Lions, because they bring this element of this ground and pound
Yep.
with that offensive line. And then I think they could give the Eagles a little run for their money right now. But yeah, it's
100%.
49ers all the way right now in that conference.
Yeah, it's the 49ers. I can't even disagree with that. Hopefully,
Boy,
my
that's
Cowboys change it
I'm,
tomorrow.
I'm surprised you ain't trying to throw the Cowboys in there, man.
I'm gonna throw them in there for a little bit, but if I gotta be honest, they are the best team. But my boys, if my defense shows up like they have against these bad teams, I will give it that. We have played bad teams. Defense has showed up against bad teams outside of the Cardinals. If our defense shows up, which I think we will, because when we played the 49ers these last 2 times, even though we lost, defense showed up more last game than the 2 years ago.
Yeah,
Short, small game. We could have won that game if it wasn't for our quarterback, who I don't even want to really get too far into because we know how I feel about Dak Prescott.
oof.
Um, but I think we'll give ourselves a shot if our defense shows up and Dak just plays smart. Just play smart football. Manage football. But going over to the AFC, at first I wanted to say the Dolphins, but the reason why I can't say the Dolphins is because I'm worried about that defense. That defense is what scares me. The Bills, on the other hand, have shown up on both sides. I have that Bills defense in fantasy, and they have been lovely for me. I mean, lovely. So thank you, Bills defense. I, you guys have been amazing for me. I'm 3-1, should be 4-0, not 4-0 only because of Kelsey. Last game against the Jets just pretty much shut them out and killed me. I lost by 3 points. So Jets, uh, whatever. I don't even know what to say.
I will say this about the Miami Dolphins defense, though. They are still, I think they're in a process of, because you know Vic Fangio came over there, right? And we've
Yes,
seen what Vic Fangio can do with these defenses.
yes,
So I think they're still in that. And we talked about it. You know, it's only week 5 now, so there's
right.
only been 4 weeks of them learning that offense. They lost, you know, Jalen Ramsey, you know, in
Yeah,
preseason
that was huge. That was huge.
or in training camp. So that, I mean, that hurt. But when they figure this defense out, when they get their schemes in place, I think they can do a lot better than what they've done so far. You know, for their defense. But I think it's still a learning process right now for them.
100%. And dude, imagine the Dolphins with an actual serious defense.
Oh, with a serious
With
defense,
that
we would talk
offense,
about, yeah, we would be,
Lord,
yeah.
the league is in trouble. And I think we're in trouble regardless because I think that's what's next. I think it won't happen this year, but like you said, I think they're going to start making their way. They're going to start once they start getting healthy and getting guys used to that defensive scheme. Whew. Oh, I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
I just can't even imagine. But my guy, Tip Major, thank you so much for joining your
Oh,
boy on the Jones for Sports,
100%.
Jones and Podcast. You already know you my guy from X. We go back and forth. There's a lot of a lot of shit talking we do, but it's all fun. You know, that's just what we do as sports fans. But everybody, this is the guy to go to. So let them know where can they find you so they can get some tips from your boy.
Yeah, 100%, man. So on Twitter, again, it's straight tipping, or you could just type in my name, Tipp Major, and you can find me on all platforms. It is straight tipping, STR, the number 8, and then tipping, TIPPING. Like I said, I'm on X, I'm on Instagram, Facebook. Um, I do several spaces where in spaces, if you guys don't know, it's like a podcast, but not video. Although I've seen some of these video podcasts out here now, but yeah, so
Okay.
it's spaces where we talk about fantasy sports. On so I have a fantasy sports talk show on Tuesdays, Wednesday, and Thursday at 5 o'clock Central Standard Time. On and then on Thursday at 6 o'clock, I also have a space with the sports affiliation. And we talked to and Greg Kellogg. I don't know if any of you guys know who that is, but he is a fantasy Hall of Famer. We are on there, so I'll be on there tomorrow at 6 o'clock Central Standard Time. And then I just picked up another show with my guy New York Stan for 32-bit on Mondays. I'm gonna be talking with another Hall of Famer, Bob Harris, with Football Die Hard.
Nice.
So we're gonna be doing a space on Mondays, starting next Monday. But yeah, I'm excited about that too. And then one last thing, I also do on Sunday morning at 11, I guess it'll be 10 or 12 o'clock your time.
Mm-hmm.
I do a sit start injury report,
Mm.
last minute lineup questions. I do that every Sunday. I do it. I'm going to do it this Sunday. The following Sunday, I got some family coming into town, so I won't be doing it that Sunday. But every Sunday after that, I'll be back on. And we do sit start questions, last minute,
Love that.
injury questions. And it's a lot of fun. We get a lot of rapid fire questions coming in, so it gets really, really quick, really busy in that. So yeah, come check me out. Always answering my questions. If you follow me and you DM me, then I'll try my best to answer your questions throughout the week, and then especially on Sundays.
Absolutely. And like I said, this is the man to go to, people. Especially if you on X. I mean, those spaces, I'm trying to tell you. I'm trying to tell you. People are in there and they trying to find out what they should do with their team.
Yeah,
And they go to this man. And the other guys that he mentioned, those are some gurus. Like they know. This is a guru. He
yeah,
knows.
yeah.
And before I get you out of here, let me answer one more question from my guy, Deshaun. He said, should I take Tyler Boyd as a plan B? What do you think about Tyler Boyd?
Yeah, so T. Higgins
How's it
is
going?
is banged up. He's got an injury. T. Higgins is always banged up, but it doesn't look like. I mean, he might be out. We don't know yet because another thing I want to talk to you guys about is the practice report situation. So
Mm,
you always look at the practice reports. Usually, they don't practice on Tuesdays
yep.
unless they're playing Thursday night. But Wednesday is usually a rest day for a lot of the veterans. They might have limited practices here and there. Thursday, Friday is the big day. Friday is if they are not practicing or they are saying they're practicing on the side or something like this, that's when you need to
So,
throw the red flag up because
yep.
um, on those Friday practice reports and Saturday for those Monday games, those are when you will find out, if those players are actually playing. And I was on a space with my guy Sage, Saged Up Network. Shout
Shout
out to
out to Sage.
I'm on and me and you were both on the Saged Up Network. So
Yes,
so
sir.
I was on a space and we were talking about injury reports. We were talking about how like you can basically tell if a player is playing by Friday afternoon,
Mm,
Friday evening. based off of looking at those practice reports. Now, there are some situations where you might have to chime in again on the weekend, but
Right.
yeah, usually check out those practice reports. And right now, T. Higgins is not practicing from the latest one that I saw. And so Tyler Boyd is somebody you definitely want to get. We've seen him do it whenever T. Higgins or Jamar Chase sits
Yep.
out. Tyler Boyd comes in, and if they're still going to be stubborn and not and continue to play Joe Burrow, then he's gonna
Oh, that's
have to throw to somebody. So Tyler Boyd is a guy, but right now I'm really, unless it's Jamar Chase, I will say this: I am really fading all the Cincinnati Bengals until further notice, man.
right.
Yeah.
Especially with that Joe Burrow situation. 100%, I agree. My guy, Tip Major, you already know you are my guy. Forever we locked in. I
100%.
still hope your Raiders lose every week because
I
you
hope your
always hating
Cowboys
on my
lose every week,
Cowboys.
like especially this week, because you know you're gonna hear from me. You know you're gonna hear from
Oh
me.
yeah, that's why I got to get it in now. That's why I got to get it in now because I already know I'm gonna hear from you on Monday. I got to get it in right now. So, but like always, man, appreciate your support. Like always, like I said, guys, go check him out. The link, all his stuff will be in my bio as well. It's your boy Jones, straight trip. I keep saying tripping,
Tripping,
straight,
tipping, but yeah, tipping. It's straight tipping.
straight tipping. It's your
100%.
boy Jones, the Jones of Sports Podcast. We Jones. Peace.
Out.